what now?
I want to make sure it doesn't distort the bed, bend the rail. It shouldn't. No, that's when
Pick up on your side, dude. No, just pick up on the fender well. I did mine. Something was stuck up rock.
the gas to it. It's still stuck.
It can be lifted up okay. You're clear, aren't you?
Laying out my stripes here so that I can show an orientation of my cuts, so I know where to land. There's a side here where the gas tank filler is for a secondary fuel fill, and I want to remove that. So I want to use the passenger side panel that has the same curve in it, and use that to make a good patch for the driver's side. In the front edge there's some rust. I want to get that cut out, and the patch on the passenger side will be a perfect size if you lay your cuts out right. Keep it all looking stock. So that's the idea here. That's the plan. And this is just the initial cuts. I will end up changing that bottom line a little bit that comes straight across the front edge of the bed line. The top did shift a little bit right here in front of this pocket. I moved that line back about 2 inches so that I didn't have a zigzag cut at the top. So we'll just line the front sheet metal back up and weld her back in place, and we'll have an instant short bed. It's just that simple. All right, so I went ahead and picked up the bed off the chassis. We had pulled it yesterday to pressure wash the frame, pull the tank, inspect stuff. I pressure washed the bottom of the bed and the whole truck, matter of fact, just to get a good clean slate for today. Masked out our cut lines, and I'm going to get it set up on some cribbing so that way it'll be kind of seat level, and I can come around and kind of comfortably cut it instead of crawling around all over the thing. Just make it a little easier. So use my engine hoist and some creative strapping. As this becomes something that I do regularly or more often, I'll make a little cradle assembly for the bed so that I can lift it up a little easier, because it's a little cumbersome, but it does the job. The arm on the boom of the crane could be a little bit longer to get over the center of the bed. If it was a short bed, it probably wouldn't be a big a deal, but it's nose heavy. So, but we're getting ready to cut all that out of there. So let me get her set down on some cribbing and a little bit more safe to work around, and we'll get started. This is some of the rust I have to address. Pretty typical in these old trucks. Actually, it's less than typical in my opinion. Most of the time the cab corners are just gone. And as you can see, those are pretty mint. So when I take this header off, I'll lay this to the side, do some repairs on this front edge. Over here, it looks like it needs a little work too. But we'll address all that. And I'm just making sure this front support beam on the front edge of that is in good shape. I may or may not have to do some repairs to that. Very typical rust in the bed of these old Fords from what I've seen. Anyway, like I said, the cut lines are marked out. This is my 16 inches that's going to go away. This will be the new leading edge of the bed. I did leave it a little bit long so that I'll have enough to either fold over or make my decision when I get here of what I want to do to reattach it. The only other thing I noticed is that the stake pockets mid-ship of the bed on a short bed, they're not any there. I looked at replacement beds just to see details, and those are gone. Unfortunately, if I delete them, you'll still see them on the inside. So my option is to leave them, and I think that's what most people do anyway. It's just one less thing to have to worry about. Plus, it'll get rid of some of the original paint, and I kind of want to avoid that because it's in good shape. And in the end, I may buff this thing and see if it'll come back to shine, even with the rust. Let's get to cutting. I got it set up on my cribbing, very stable, and I'm gonna cut that front header off, and we'll go from there. I do want to just go over my measurements one more time, make sure everything's right. I want to cut once, so you measure 2 or 3 times and cut once, and usually that ends up with a good result. So let's throw a tape measure out. Let's see what we got. 16. It's kind of neat. The front edge of the bed still got some chalk marks on it. Never was exposed to the elements as much, so leading me to believe this is the original color and paint, which I know is the original color. It's the original paint just by looking. I did notice there's a little bitty wormholes in the back right here where it looks like it had a little whammy. Just ever so slight, old school slide hammer technique. So that's in there. Other than that, the body is overall fantastic shape. So this header panel, a couple of dings and hits, but I'm not really worried about it. The bed floor is immaculate, other than this corner here, which is rusty, and it's getting cut out. So one of the interesting things when you cut these down, here's the original hole, a bolt hole, and you got this indentation around it. Back here, at nearly the exact mark you need to cut, is another indentation. You just got to drill your hole for your bolt. So your bed bolt hole will land right there. So we'll drill that out and then mark the chassis wherever we need it. Once I get the other 4 bolts lined up and bolted down. And you can also tell they're not in a straight line. On the older models, their chassis is straight. On the 74 and up, I guess whatever it is, that body style, the Dent side, chassis dives in a little bit right in here. So this bolt hole is kicked in that amount. So you can see it clearly there. I have a bolt, my line straight across the bed floor there, my zigzag, and it's going to be interesting. I think I'll just cut straight across on the bottom here and run my seam there. I have not seen any of my videos I've been watching for reference or research where they cut that part. Whether they just, wonder if they just cut straight through it. Maybe what they do. Figure out a way to zigzag over here and get back in line with this. Maybe I'll come straight down from there and kick over. That might be something to think about real quick before I get into this and cut. So let me do some thinking on that. So I went through and leveled the bed, put my laser on it, and got my straight line on both sides. And went ahead and got the line here on the bed floor. I want to run my level on that again. The tape is throwing me off. It's wonky, but I think the line's really straight and not the header panel. It's bent, but the floor is pretty relatively consistent. So here, it's a little heavy on the 16. Just gonna go across and double check again. Yeah, it's a little bit heavy. That'll leave me a little bit of room. That one's not, so I'm gonna straighten that up. It's a little bit wonky. Yeah. Let me go back over on this side and get this one straightened back out. All right, well, first thing I want to do is just kind of eyeball this. This has got some repairs that need to be done before I reattach it. And also need to cut the front leading edge of the bed floor out. But it will still slide in there. Like so, somewhat. Go over a little bit right there. That won't do much because of that support underneath is preventing me from sliding forward. Yeah. So everything looks pretty good. If I go forward equal amounts on both sides, the top rails will line right back up. So let's go ahead and get the front floor out, and then we'll revisit this arrangement and make sure everything's kosher before, and then we'll attack the corners down there and over here. This one's going to take the rest of the day to fix and fabricate a new panel and clean it all up, and then probably weld it back up in the morning, make sure everything's lined up. Take my time, do it right the first time. But that's pretty close to being a short bed right there. The plan of attack is just to drill out the spot welds along the front edge of that, where the header meets. Have to drill them out of here too. Keep the support beam. Thankfully, that's in really good shape. Surface rust, no big deal. And we'll go along from there. It was funny, I was watching videos on short beds and just Crown Vic swaps and things of that nature. And I watch Fitzy's fabrication a lot. Shout out to Fitzy. I learned a lot from you, buddy, and I appreciate it. All you do to share. But his F100 is really, really, really rough. And I commented and said, you know, you could find a better truck. He said, where he's at, it looks like Canada somewhere. That's as best you're going to get. And it's rough. But his channel specializes in metal repair, so it's right up his alley. But I just wanted to, I just feel real lucky that this is the minimal rust that I have to deal with, and considering all the rust he's dealt with, it's a far cry. So I would throw that one away where I live and start with something fresh like this. So, but let's get to repairing this, and like I said, drilling all those welds out, and we'll get this floor out of here. Just trying to figure out the best plan of attack to make this piece. I don't really feel like it's that huge of a deal, but I kind of want to try to tackle it just because. I'll lay that in here, and that'll give me this panel. Now I know where to cut this, and I'll leave it along up here because this is going to become that. And hopefully I can get it within them. I'm probably going to cut me right here and weld a seam right there because this to this is on I'm going to get that correctly. So I got my patch pretty well made up. Obviously, I'm going to clean that up, take the paint off and all that good stuff, but it dips in like the other one does and replaces all this rusty, crusty crap. So pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead, I went ahead and scrub my line. I'm going to go ahead and cut this off and we'll start fitting this into place. And I may or may not remake this. It's pretty crusty on the back. I'm not sure. It may weld there. I just spotted in here like it's supposed to be. The backside's crusty, but the backside is crusty, but it's still pretty good metal. We'll see how that goes. But we're coming right along with this patch. So yesterday before I left, put a little ISFO all on the front edge of the bed and around this bottom edge. And just anywhere I saw rust, seam seal was failing, so we put it in there. And this is the inside of the bed, so it was pretty crusty. Put it in there. So I'm gonna finish grinding my patch, weld that on, and then I'm gonna go through and grind all these spot welds out of this beam here, not to remove it from this pinch weld, but to remove the floor from that, because that's gonna be the new front edge of the bed. So this is the last piece that's got to be taken off before we start fitting the bed, the header panel back in place, and get this thing back together, hopefully. So let's get to it. So I went ahead and pulled the bed floor off of the front header here. Just drilled a bunch of spot welds off of that lower cross member and popped it right off. It put up a little bit of fight, but it's rusty, and it just popped on a few of them, so made it a little easier to wedge it in there and get it off. Cleaned up a lot of the bottom here, little pinhole here and there, but I'm not worried about it. I'm gonna put some more ISFO on that before I final weld the new floor on top and neutralize that rust. But I've noticed I have to come back here where that header, where this support beam sits. They notched the floor, so I got to go back underneath the floor here and notch the new part so it'll clear. And we can slide it back into place and try to start fitting this in. I do want to go back and the other side, I noticed a little hole down here. I want to come through and patch this up, and just because it's off and it's easy to get to, you might as well go ahead and do it. There's decent metal around it, so just a small patch, make that hole again, and we'll prime it, and this will never be seen again. So let's go ahead and do it now. But all my rust is neutralized. Looks like I missed this, so I'll put some more ISFO on that. Should be going back together here in another couple hours. So it's coming right along. So I took the old floor that I cut off the front of that header and laid it in place over the existing floor and lined up my bolt holes and put a little spray paint there to mark them out better, and made it much easier to see. And I'll drill those out, and actually ended up using a mini sledge and drilled the hole out the size of the bolt hole, and then pounded the head of the bolt in since it's a carriage bolt, and it kind of ended up puckering the metal a little bit, so it gives it a little more bite when I go to turn and tighten the bolt down. So it worked out really well. All right, I got the first mock up. I couldn't hold the camera and my clamps and all that, so mocked it up and got her clamped in loosely. And I can only stand so far back, but it fits really good. I'm pretty happy with all that so far. I got a short bed now. I left it a little long because my plan of attack is to weld the front edge, and hopefully I don't have a seam down the side of the bed. I think I've said that before, but some of the videos I've seen, they're actually folding it over and warming up the corner. I don't necessarily want to do that. I don't want to burn off too much of this paint out here. So if I just tack and keep it cool, I think I can make the bed paint survive that. I think it'll survive that, a little bit of heat. Just keep a wet rag over here, keep the heat off of this paint. Tack cool, stuff like that. I need to go ahead and make this patch panel while I got the header panel off. I've got a loose piece from the other quarter panel there that I'm going to use. Let's see. So I've got a loose piece here. This is from the passenger side, the little sweep at the bottom of the bed. Plan on using that, and we'll cut however long we need, and that way I don't have to make all that because it's time consuming. Probably cut up a little higher and get into some of that good metal there, and I can just flatten this out. It's no big deal. I may go through and treat the entire bed with the OSPHO. It neutralizes the rust and turns it this brownish color. It'll help the bed survive a lot longer. In reality, I would put a color matched bed liner in here and it'd disappear and look really good. But I think that's for the next owner. I don't really plan on putting much more into it. Just this is kind of more of an experiment to see how to do it. So, something I wanted to learn to do and get into the game of short bed forwards. So I can do another one now and know where my head is and know what the task is and can formulate a game plan a lot better now. So it's pretty easy actually if you think about it. You're just cutting 16 inches out. As long as you make your cut square, and if you know how to weld, anybody can do this really. I have no special tools. I don't have a lift. None of that. So easy peasy. Let's get the header back off and we'll fab that panel up and then try to get this back into place here soon. All right, so in order for this to fit correctly, I couldn't do, I already kept the curve, so I couldn't roll that lip to create this flange. So what I did was just cut a straight piece and bend it at a 90 and put it in a shrinker and shrunk the edge to make this curve. And I'll sit it behind it and underneath this new flange, and I'll just weld it together wherever I need it, creating that, and then creating that so that you can see it, and make a new flange. This is not quite the right shape. I matched this up to the other side that hasn't been mangled and moved, so do a little trimming here and kind of taper it away. You'll never know once I fill it back in with seam seal. You never know it was messed with, so it'll be just fine. Just need to trim it to fit, get my right length, and put it together. All right, so we're gonna chisel away the rest of this rusty little panel here and make way for a new one. I had to do a little smacking with the hammer and a little cutting, and I'll go ahead and fit that new curved piece, and this is the piece that I cut off from the passenger side inner structure, and that little curved panel matched up pretty good. Just welding on my new flange I created, and try not to burn too much of the paint off, but on the inside of the bed I'm not really too concerned because I'm just going to treat it and send it on down the line. Maybe the next owner will put a little bed liner in there or something like that. It'll help clean it up. But we'll get this panel welded in place and we'll move on to getting the header back fitted in place. I might have got a little ahead of myself, but especially videoing, but we got the front edge welded, tacked in. Let me get around there and show the close up. Went ahead and tacked the tops in, nice, and everything's fitting perfect. Sides on the interior are tacked in. The little patch in the corners is tacked in. I haven't got the front beam yet, but we're working on tacking all the inner structure and this structure here. And I'll probably take the bed and flip it on its nose, and we'll weld that front beam across there on the bottom. Just tack it. There was a secondary beam that's in the way. Not really in the way, but it kind of overlaps, and I was thinking about just taking it out because it's a beam here and now a beam here there. It's unnecessary for this application, but long bed it needed the support, so I'm just going to opt to leave it in, make it simpler. But on a future one, I may take that out. One that I'm just not concerned with it. It's not going to prevent anything from happening or working properly. So, but we'll keep an eye on this. Got this edge to tack. We're going to lose the paint a little bit, but we'll make that line rust. Maybe I can find some paint that'll match, dust it, and hide it a little bit. But for the most part, it'll just match with the rest of it. We got the old blue truck cut down. We got an official short bed out of it, and I'm pretty happy with the results. Got a little more work to do with the grinding on the metal and get the shape of the front edge of the bed correct. Kind of try to make a profile, maybe the door or something like that. Get it nice and straight. But I don't plan on doing body work to it. I was thinking maybe some red oxide primer might be a good little trick for it. Other than that, I'm just thinking maybe getting some paint and blend the blue back in, but I'm not really too concerned with it. It'll rust and match a lot of other scars and stuff. And I did the front edge trick, so that hopefully that line will disappear and it's once more not down the side of the bed. Like I said, I'm really happy with the results. It was a lot of work, but it wasn't really as bad as I thought it was going to be. No secrets, no tricks. So next installment, we'll cut down the chassis and we'll get the bed mounted and make this an official short bed. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you next time on Big Lake Hot Rods.